What's up, everybody? My name is Jesse. I'm one of the leaders at the Friday Night Recovery Group, and I'm here today in Substance Church downtown to talk to you about the Beatitudes. So the Beatitudes can actually be found in both Matthew and Luke, but focusing a little bit more on Matthew's account of what Jesus said, which can be found in Matthew 5, 1 through 12. So Jesus decides to actually kick off his Sermon on the Mount, which is arguably the most popular sermon that Jesus ever gave in all of recorded history. So I think that just says something that he decided to open it with this about how closely we should be listening, and paying attention to what he has to say. So there's two things that I really want to hit on. Jesus actually teaches us about in the Beatitudes. He teaches us about God's character. So each line, pretty much each line of the Beatitudes, the way that Matthew actually recounts it, it starts off with the word blessed. So it says, "Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy." And each one kind of is framed the same way. And I think this is actually important because it's a demonstration of God's grace. I at first was like, well, why doesn't it say, if you show mercy, then you will be blessed and you will receive mercy? That just seems like it's a better way to say it. But I think that he's saying it actually because in God's grace, by default, we are blessed if we have any of these things in our character already. If we have any of these things happening to us already. But in turn, we can also be blessed. We can also receive blessing by living these things out, which leads me to the second point, and it's how we're called to live. So in the Beatitudes, Jesus is actually calling us to be merciful, to be meek, to be peacemakers. And it's interesting when you really actually think about it, how many people actually want to be those things? How many people want to be poor or be persecuted? And I don't think it's any different now than it was back then. We're all still humans. And I think that, a lot of us don't want to be those things. We want to be admired. We want to be loved. We want to be the best, most famous skater. We want to be rich. But the thing is that Jesus is calling us to these things for a reason. And I think we need to, really look at what that reason is. And I think that it's for, a couple of reasons, but one, obviously, if we live these things out, we are demonstrating our love for Jesus, for God. But I think in so doing as well, I think about my brother. I love my brother. I love him to death. And when it comes to these things, being meek, being merciful, being a peacemaker, being poor, all of this stuff, being persecuted, I would gladly be and go through all of these things if it meant that I could support my brother in some way, lift him up, help him through something that he's going through. I would do all of these things for him because I love him dearly, right? And God is calling us to be that for all people, for all of his children, right? He's calling us to that, as a way to live so that we can love on everybody the same way. And I kind of like to sum this up in a shorter verse, really. So in Luke 14, verse 11, Luke's actually recounting what Jesus said at a different time. And so Luke 14:11 says, "For all those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted." So really he's talking about taking the lowest seat in the room, right? Putting ourselves below other people. And I think that is a good summary, really, of what the Beatitudes are teaching us to do as well, to take the lowest seat. So my challenge for you as you go throughout your week, what if your life could be radically better? What if it could be radically better by living out some of these things, by living out the Beatitudes. So the next time you're out riding, the next time you're at the park or you're on the hill and it's packed out, and for example, you see that kid that's been sitting there for like 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and most of you know what I'm talking about, because you see them, but you typically, at least many of you, you don't do anything, you don't say anything, you just keep on riding, you just assume that they're sitting there because they want to sit there. But when you notice that they're sitting there because they're maybe afraid, they're a beginner and they're just afraid they're going to fall and get in people's way, or maybe they're afraid they're just going to get in the way of the riders that they're intimidated by. Like, think about it. How could you start to live out these Beatitudes in that situation? Or if you're like me and you're just, you can't handle the stress at work lately, or maybe you're upset with somebody at school or a coworker, or a customer, whatever the case may be, start to think about, like, how did the Beatitudes teach me how to respond? How do they teach me how to respond in this situation? What position is Jesus calling me to take in this situation? So that's all I got for you. Have a good one, you guys.